Catalyst, an agent that provokes or speeds significant change or action. Entertainment media can define us, no matter the form that media takes, whether it is books, movies, video games. The media we consume every day, sometimes multiple times a day, affect us human beings and fundamentally change who we are. But no matter what types of media people consume, one thing remains constant. Everyone has that one piece of media, that changes them, that changes their outlook on life and how they see the world. And maybe that media saves them. Everyone has their catalyst. Oh yeah, it's going to be one of those videos. Roll intro. One year ago, on April 5th, 2023, I made a video titled Year 1 Review. In that video, I went over the previous year of making content on YouTube, the stats, the videos, my personal achievements, etc. But while that was the primary part of the video, it wasn't the most important, at least not for me, because in that video, I also discussed the declining state of my mental health, and how the channel, unfortunately, had a role in that. During year 1, I had released a video every day between April 5th, 2022 and April 5th, 2023, about 90% of the time. I believe I had only missed about 3 to 4 weeks total spread amongst the year, which is a great accomplishment I take a lot of pride in. I don't want to take away from how big of an accomplishment that actually is, but what's important in this instance are the feelings that came with that. As time went on, I felt a growing sense of apathy towards creating content. On top of that, I felt a growing sense of anxiety when picking up new games. Every time I picked up a controller, the same thought ran through my head. Should I be making videos for this? If I don't make a video on this, I shouldn't play it just in case I want to play it later. And if I don't make a video on this, I should be playing something I can make a video on. And if I don't, I'm failing as a content creator. Real cheery stuff, I know. But before I knew it, April had arrived. And I made the year 1 review video. And despite talking about my issues with the channel and how I was losing the drive to make content because I was at this standstill with myself, nothing changed. Business progressed as normal. I still made content as often as I could manage with new Let's Plays, streams, etc. Fast forward to June 16th. Well, actually, let's dive further into that. Because what was it that I was feeling? Now, you might already be yelling at the screen because you know what the experience is, but I can't hear you, so you can stop yelling. People are giving you weird looks. Anyway, what I was feeling at the time is something almost everyone experiences at some point, sometimes multiple times, at different points in their life. Burnout. While the term is thrown around pretty lightly, not many know that it's an actual psychological syndrome. It occurs after repeated or prolonged stress of a job. Now, this can be a paid job like lawyer or law enforcement, but it could be a job in the less traditional sense, like parenting, and it happens a lot to content creators. There are 3 primary characteristics psychologists use when defining burnout. These include an overwhelming exhaustion, a sense of ineffectiveness or lack of accomplishment, and finally, feelings of detachment and cynicism from the job or task the person is participating in. Now, while most people, if not everyone, has certainly felt all of these before, I definitely have during that point in my life. The unique aspect of those characteristics, however, and how they come back to burnout, is that they all have one important correlation. The stress burnout gives comes from within a social context, involving the person's perception of both themselves, but also others. That correlation hit particularly hard for me as a content creator, as I'm sure it does for others. The relationship between creator and viewer is a very unique one. The viewer expects content to come out in a relatively regular schedule, and for that content to release in at least as high or of higher quality than the previous one, and for that video to be of interest to them throughout the runtime, so they don't feel like they wasted the time choosing your video over the other 3.7 million videos uploaded that day on YouTube alone. All that, plus a few other things, can make the creator get burnout rather quickly. trying to not only appeal to their current audience, but also to potential new audiences. That, on top of not growing as fast as they'd like, or a video not performing as well as they had hoped and put effort into, this happens to many creators throughout their YouTube career and has now happened to me. I know, bet you didn't realize you were going to learn about psychology in this video about Final Fantasy, now did you? Ooh, speaking of, back to 2023. Friday, June 16th, 2023. 4 days prior, a demo for a little game released, Final Fantasy XVI. I had been wanting to return to my Demo Friday series that I had put aside for other things, and decided that, since it was free, I'd try my hand at the demo. For context, my experience with Final Fantasy is quite brief. I would not call myself an avid Final Fantasy fan, at least not back then. I'd only ever played a little of Final Fantasy III and some of Final Fantasy XIII, but never beat either of them. In fact, the only Final Fantasy game I had beaten up to that point was Final Fantasy Tactics Advance II, Grimoire of the Rift, a spin-off title on the Nintendo DS, which, by the way, is still one of my favorite games ever. Take that as you will. So, safe to say, I was pretty blind to the series going in. I had seen the original reveal trailer for 16 back in 2022, but that's it. So, on June 16th, I downloaded the demo and began playing. Now, how Demo Friday works is I try to keep the video down to about 30 to 40 minutes, but this demo I had a lot of fun with, so I went to the max hour that my PlayStation could record for, getting to about this area in a forest where it teaches you to go through these gates, where it auto takes you to a new area. And then, video went through some quick edits and got released that day. After turning off the system, I found I really enjoyed the game, but again, had that gnawing itch inside me telling me I couldn't play more unless I made a series of it. But I didn't know if I wanted to make a full series of it. So I put the game on my backlog and just made other content. Live streams of Road Company, Hades, as well as some other projects. Oh man, I have got to get back to Hades. Even after playing other games and live streams, I found myself still thinking about Final Fantasy XVI and how intrigued I was by the story. It had only just begun. I'd barely scratched the surface of it, but I was really enthralled by the story, and my brain refused to give up on it. What I was feeling, and a feeling you've probably had, is partially, at least, an example of the Zeigarnik effect. In 1927, Soviet psychologist Bluma Zeigarnik published a study with two groups of people undertaking a task. One group got to finish their task, while the other group was interrupted halfway through. When asked later how much they could recall of the task, do you want to guess which group remembered more? If you thought the group that finished their task, you would be wrong. See, this study, and others like it, put forward the idea that the brain tends to remember unfinished tasks. It's why if you go shopping but didn't complete the laundry at home, you'll still likely be thinking about it while shopping, even subconsciously. It's why you find yourself thinking about that book you're currently reading even though you're at work, and it's part of why I, despite doing just about anything else, couldn't stop thinking about this demo of Final Fantasy XVI. But why that game specifically? I asked myself. I knew it was me because I recognized my voice. Well, that question has a complicated answer, and I say that mainly because I don't know the answer. It's likely a lot of different reasons, but I think for me it was partially because of what we'll talk about later. But also, I've always been a fan of JRPGs. I love games like Fire Emblem and, again, Final Fantasy Tactics Advance 2, so it made sense that the game spoke to me. But in the end, I don't think the why is necessarily important. What is important is that I could not stop thinking about it. It wouldn't be until July that I decided I hit my breaking point. I was sitting in my living room debating whether or not to play something. At that point, it had been 3 weeks without content on the channel. 3 straight weeks. About the same amount of time I had missed all of last year. I felt dejected and just about to quit YouTube. I wasn't growing like my friends were on the platform, but even that wasn't it. It wasn't that I wasn't growing, but that I even had the audacity to really try. Yeah, it was that bad. So, in a last-ditch effort, I decided I'd force myself to play the rest of the demo. Just to see how the demo ended and to try and grasp some of that childlike joy I had so fleetingly experienced while playing. I figured if I do end up quitting creating content, I wouldn't have to worry about making commentary on it anyway. So I boot up the game, I go through the gate. That night, I played for about 2 hours. I got past the initial prologue where the protagonist, Clive Rossfield, becomes an adult again. I fought a giant bush, I stormed castle gates, made some friends with a pair of knights that felt very much like Christmas Cavaliers. If you understood that reference, you're my best friend. I got to meet a cool dog and learn what being a shield truly meant. I felt the whiplash of what had just occurred at Phoenix Gate. If you know, you know. And I stopped. I noticed something. A feeling that was familiar, but for so long had been out of reach. What was I feeling? Was this what fun was? For the first time in a long time, I was enjoying games without having to worry. Without having to worry about commentary or the itching in the back of my brain telling me to record. I was having fun playing a game again. I knew immediately I didn't want this to end. Without even finishing the demo, I quickly went and purchased the full game and started playing where I left off. This would be a quiet patch of sporadic content on the channel, but it was some of the most fun I had been having. And honestly, the work I did put out during that time was some of my favorite to do. It took me until November till I beat Final Fantasy XVI. 5 months of playing that game. 128 hours later, I completed every main story mission, every side quest, got every weapon, found every piece of music for the hideaway. I did everything in Final Fantasy XVI, and I loved every minute of it. I feel like I should explain why this is important. I don't usually play games to 100%. I'm not what people call a completionist. I don't try and platinum games. I don't feel the need to collect every feather, every Korok seed, or every Riddler trophy. I feel comfortable completing just the main questline, and whatever side quests, collectibles, or achievements trophies I get along the way are enough for me. Once I roll credits, I'm good. Except in the rare instance of a man game. To take a page out of Daryl Talks Games, a fantastic creator here on YouTube and an inspiration for this video. Actually, as I'm writing this script, I'll admit his voice is narrating the words I'm writing now. But back to the important thing. A man game is a game that, quite simply, makes you just breathe out, man, while or after playing it. Final Fantasy XVI was, for me, a man game. I very nearly 100%ed it. Except for like 2 combat trophies, I did everything else there was to do in Final Fantasy XVI. And as of writing the script, I am about to start the Rising Tide DLC for the game, right after finishing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Oh yeah, about that. Not only did Final Fantasy XVI reignite my love for games, the channel, and my daily life, it also truly introduced me to the greater scope of the Final Fantasy series. Like I mentioned earlier, I had only just scratched the surface of the Final Fantasy series up to that point, which I really don't know how it got to that. I love JRPGs. It's my favorite genre. I absolutely adore Fire Emblem, Star Ocean, Golden Sun, Dark Deity. I absolutely love them. But I just mostly never had the opportunity to really play a Final Fantasy, at least not as an adult. But after playing Final Fantasy XVI, I fell in love with the series. Immediately after beating 16, I started playing 7, the original to be precise. I wanted to see what the hubbub was about. Was this really one of the best games of all time? I finished it by the end of November, and I can confidently say that yes, it is one of the best games ever. After that was the remake. Finished that in April. Then I sped through Intergrade and Crisis Core in the span of about 24 hours. And now it's Rebirth. And boy, Final Fantasy Rebirth is definitely a man game. All this to say that, in a way, Final Fantasy XVI, a game that didn't even get Game of the Year nomination, robbed RIP, saved me. Maybe it didn't literally save me. There may not have been the threat of death or some harm to me physically, but the game came into my life right as I was about to give up something I had loved for 20 plus years. It came at a time when I was just going through the motions. My relationships were strained. The channel had its biggest drought of content ever during this period. I felt stuck. And then, when I was at my lowest point, I made a last-ditch effort and forced myself to play. Now, maybe this video doesn't serve as much a purpose to you. Maybe you haven't found that game, or book, or movie that changes the way you look at the world. Maybe you're still going through the motions. But all roads have to come to an end. All cliffs have an edge. And eventually, you too will find your catalyst. If you guys made it to the end, thank you so much for watching. This video was a huge undertaking and took a lot of time to make, so if you enjoyed, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And if you like this video essay format, please let me know down below. And with that, peace and love, you beautiful people, and have a damn good one. Good gaming.